Hello, my name's Dave Ford and this is Logan the Whippet, out once again on a walk in the New Forest. Today we'll be doing a circular route of about 4 miles, starting and finishing at the village of Ashurst, which is just off the A35, not that far from Southampton. Now, during our walk today we'll be coming across the site of an old saltpetre plant, an old Roman road, a very strange looking tree, and we might even come across the odd pig or two. So do join us. Logan, are you ready? Are you ready? Are you ready? He's ready. Let's go. Well, we're going to start our walk from the car park near the railway station, and I just want to show you this building before we go any further. Just to my right, I'll turn the camera around. It's a hospital now, but it's got a lot of history attached to it. This was the New Forest Union workhouse, built in 1836, and obviously for the poor and the needy and the infirm in the area, and it continued during that sort of role until the 1930s, and then it became eventually a hospital in the 1940s when it was taken over by the fledgling National Health Service. It looks a lot younger than it is because of all that cladding. And just to the side of it, this red brick building has a little nave and chancel built in the 1850s, which was obviously for the residents of the workhouse. And as you can see, it's got a nice little bell at the top there. It's no longer used as a religious building. I had a quick peep inside and it looks as though it's used as office space. Anyway, let's get away from this hustle and bustle of the main A35 and head for a peace and quiet of the forest. Well, we've just come up a little gravel track right on the edge of the forest, but just before we go in, I want to show you something that, to be honest, you wouldn't know it was here unless you were specifically looking for it. I'll turn the camera around. You've just got an old dilapidated bit of fencing and some barbed wire, but if we peek through, I don't know if you can see, it is a bit dark and gloomy in there, but there's looks like a concrete post. Well, believe it or not, that is an old New Forest boundary stone, and it's got the date 1861 written on it. I always think it's a shame that something like that is just left and almost forgotten about. There must be thousands of people that walk by along this path every year, and well, they just won't know it's here. Now, just behind me is a very quaint little keeper's cottage. Let's go and have a look. And the thing that I spotted, which I thought was quite pretty, look at that stone carving of a deer's head with antlers. What does it say? I think it's the keeper's name, and it's dated 1970 by the looks of things. And if we just have a little look round the back, what a lovely little cottage. Now, up against the wall is a tablet. I'm not going to be able to film it, but I'll see if I can get a still photograph from a distance. But it basically commemorates the fact that in 1810 the area became an enclosure, an official wood for timber production. And there's some writing on there. It says ARP, which stands for acres, roods and perches. So I think it's 177 acres, 1 rood and 9 1/4 perches. Now, if you're wondering what on earth I'm talking about, we all know what an acre is, and I think I'm right in saying a rood is 1/4 of an acre, and as for a perch, I think there are 40 perches in a rood. Anyway, less of all this maths. Let's kick on into the woods. Well, it hasn't taken us too long to find ourselves in some very dense woodland, but it's very, very peaceful. We're filming, what, mid-September, and the sun's out, making its way through the canopy above. Lots of squirrels, lots of birds tweeting away. And just behind me, somebody's obviously made themselves a nice little den. Super place to come and play if you're a kid, I should imagine. But what I wanted to show you was just to the right of me, there's a really ancient track bordered either side by some moss covered banks. It separates a couple of enclosures. We've got Prior's enclosure on the far side and then Church Place enclosure on this side. And this route, so it's an ancient route. Back in the 14th, 15th century it was known as the King's Road, and it basically follows the line of an old Roman road, dead straight. But now, of course, not used, totally overgrown. We've just made our way down this lovely track, lots of sawn logs and that wonderful smell of newly cut wood. It just reminds us that these are still working forests, and indeed, just pan the camera around, we've got some pretty impressive equipment over there. Look at the number of logs that grabber has got hold of, and the size of those tyres on that tractor in front. Oops, you dropped one. Oops, I think we better get out of the way, Logan. Oh, I'm pleased to say he's going to pick it up. It reminds me of remember when you're at the seaside and you see those little grab games? Well, here's a chap who's doing it and getting paid to do so. Wow. That's a big piece of equipment, that's for sure. Well, we'll leave him to it, I think. The sun really is coming out now, and it's going to be a glorious day today, that's for sure. Sorry about the shadow, can't help that. But we've got another one of these boundaries just to the left of us. If I turn around and pan the camera again, there's this moss covered bank on either side. This isn't a road as such, this just cuts two enclosures in half. So on the left hand side you've got Deer Leap enclosure, and on the right hand side Church Place enclosure. Quite an old setup. It was established in 1810, so it's been around for a while. Mixture of oak, beech and of course the more modern pine. But now as we walk along here, I'm going to point up towards the right. I'm not sure whether you'll be able to see it or not. You'll have to take my word for it. There is a bracken clad knoll, I suppose you'd call it, and that was the site of a medieval keeper's lodge that was called Church Place, although funnily enough it has no religious connection whatsoever, and that's quite common in the New Forest. There's often a church association given to the remains of an old building, but wrongly assigned, especially when they come across these unexplained earthworks, and there's almost like a mistaken belief that, well, William the Conqueror, when he set up the New Forest, it was thought that he destroyed whole villages, including churches, to make way for his new hunting ground, but that wasn't always necessarily the case. Well, as you can tell, we're on a railway bridge. Oops, here comes another one. Here we go. So the bridge that I'm on was built in 1848, as I said, a year after the railway was built in 1847. There's a station just up the road at Ashurst, and from memory I think this is the London Waterloo to Weymouth line. I see there's a plaque on the other side of the bridge, W&J Lancaster Southampton, so I'm guessing those are the guys that built the bridge. Well, having waited for about 15 minutes for a train and two came along, we'll kick on. Aha! Well, I was hoping that at some stage during the autumn I'd come across some of these little critters. You tend to find that September, October time, pigs get left out into the forest to roam free, and their prime objective is to eat acorns, because obviously acorns are poisonous for the New Forest ponies. So this lot are doing a little bit of work for the forest, and they seem to be quite content. Hey. Oh, another one coming out over there. As I say, they tend only to be in for a couple of months, so it's always nice to see them as another sign of the season passing by. I do love pigs. I know people say they can be quite dirty, and this lot probably could do with a bath. Anyway, we shall leave them to it. Oh, I'll have to say hello to you as well. Up you go. Lovely sight. When I'm out in the forest, I'm always looking for something that's a little bit unusual, always keeping my eyes peeled, and this is a prime example behind me. It's yeah, beech tree, that's right. But what I wanted to look at the way this branch sticks out, and then following it down, 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 and then it creates its own little seat, and then makes its way back up and is resting itself on that that holly tree. Isn't that one? I mean, sometimes nature amazes me. It's almost as if it has been designed to be a seat. What do you reckon, Logs? You've seen another squirrel, haven't you? Oh dear. We've now come across this series of pits, I suppose you'd call it, that actually is the remains of an Elizabethan saltpetre plant. I'll just turn the camera around so that perhaps you can see I'm standing in one of the pits, or hollows I suppose you'd call it. The plant was based here from 1577 to 1584, and saltpetre was a material used in the production of gunpowder, and indeed until 1561 it was imported into Britain. But they used to make it by, as I say, digging these big pits out, and they would fill it with animal waste and dung and blood and urine, and then add ash and lime, and eventually it would produce potassium nitrate. Sounds quite revolting. But as I say, it's now completely overgrown. There's a little forest pony zooms by, and most of it's overgrown now with these beech trees. Again, you wouldn't know it was here unless you were specifically looking for it. Interestingly enough, there's a road just on the other side of the trees called the Salt Road, I think. It was one of the main routes for transporting salt from the coast up through the south of England, but it had nothing to do with saltpetre. Well folks, that's the end of our walk. Logan and I have retired to the Happy Cheese pub for some light refreshment. We hope you enjoyed our walk. If you did, please like, comment and subscribe, and do check out some of our other recent video walks. Hopefully you'll be able to join us sometime in the future. In the meantime, thanks for watching, and cheerio. Right, Logan, jumbo sausage, yes, oh, and chips.